Andy Brubaker, pastor at Temple Hill Baptist Church there in Division Street here in Cadillac, and you're listening to the GroveCast.
Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the GroveCast. I am not in my office on the corner of 29 and 55, but I'm still in the church library here, trying out a different space and format. But in continuing our theme this month of October for Pastor Appreciation Month, visiting with pastors and just hearing their heart and their stories, I have my wonderful friend, Pastor Andy Brubaker from Temple Hill Baptist Church. Andy, how are you today?
Doing well, thanks.
Good. We got Taco Bell for lunch today and got to spend some time sharing Taco Bell. Listen, kids, if you want to make Pastor Andy happy, send him bottles of Mountain Dew and Taco Bell gift cards, and the man will think he's in heaven.
That's right, absolutely.
That's good. That's really good. So, Andy, you give me. You have been there. Let's start back from where we're at right now. How long have you been senior pastor at Temple Hill?
I've been senior pastor about 9 months, so I was at the church for 6 years before that as the youth pastor, and still kind of doing double duty as we transition.
Yeah. How fun, what's the transition going from 6 years as youth pastor? So it's not like you're brand new to the church,
Right.
but in some ways you are. How's that? You got a beautiful, all the people I know from that church are fantastic people, and they hit the jackpot with you and your wife for sure being there. And Pastor Jack had a great ministry there as well, so you're stepping into a good fertile field ahead of you. What's the difference there? How's that feel in the transition?
I think a lot of it was more even perceived. With me, I was very worried about how are people going to view me now? Are they going to view me as the senior pastor? Are they still going to view me as the youth pastor? And it's complicated a little bit because I'm still doing some of both, but the people have been excellent. They made the transition very easy, particularly as far as the preaching goes. Pastor Jack still does a lot of the administration, so it hasn't been too rough yet, but I feel like a new pastor coming in, and that I've still got a honeymoon period and a grace period, and I know that will end at some point, but I'm enjoying it while I can right now. So
does it have to end though? We all say that, don't we? And there's a honeymoon time, and the honeymoon. You see people have been married for 70 years. The honeymoon's not over yet. You know what I mean? I think if it's a good match, it goes a long time, doesn't it?
Yes, it should.
Yeah. So what's been the biggest adjustment for you in the transition time? I know you're still dealing with the teens a little bit, but what's been your biggest challenge, and what's been the pleasant surprise that was actually a good thing?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, I kind of alluded to already, was just even the mindset of shifting from youth pastor to senior pastor, that this is really who I am, so there are things that I need to say no to that before it was just second nature to jump in and do those and take care of those. Right. Because now there's a whole new set of responsibilities that I need to take care of and be a part of. So that's been a challenge. I'm learning that. My wife is helping me learn that as well, and we're growing in that together. But I would say that's been the biggest challenge. Probably the biggest pleasure, the biggest surprise is just the way that people have responded to the preaching. And I mean, Pastor Jack was there for, it's been 17 years now. Yeah. So I had a long ministry and always worried about, how are people going to compare us and preaching styles and all those things. But the people have really responded well. And what's been encouraging to me is some of the, old timers, and by that I mean, senior saints who've been there a long time, and they just come up to me and saying, we're really enjoying this, and here's what we're getting out of it. Here's what we haven't seen before, and that just really encourages me that it's not just, hey, pastor, good sermon, but hey, here's what we're learning from it. Even at our age, even though we've heard this, we've read it hundreds of times, that just does a heart good. So
absolutely, there is no better elixir for the heart of a pastor than some encouragement.
Right.
You give it all the time, right? And then when somebody else comes along and says, there's a great power in that. Not that you feed from that, have to have it every day. It's good to hear, though, isn't it?
Right, absolutely. So,
and especially from some people, if you don't expect to hear it from them, it's even better,
Right, yeah. Because you expect, end of the message, you're shaking hands with everybody, oh, good job. But, when they take the time to go out of their way and don't just tell you that in the line, but they send you a note, they call you on the phone, I mean, that just means the world to you.
It sure does.
Yeah.
So take us back now. Now that you've been in the ministry for a while, tell us about your calling. Where you were at, how old you were, how you knew it was the Lord, in 20 words or less. Let's get this whole package in there, right? I know it's like, hey, just spit that out of there.
Yeah.
It was years of coming into making, but it's
Right.
to take us back to that part of your life and how that came about.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a Christian home, so I always assumed I was saved, but it wasn't until shortly after my grandfather died, and as a freshman in high school, that I put my faith and trust in Jesus, and just a number of transitions at that point. We switched churches and went to a church where the youth pastor saw a lot of things in me that I didn't see in myself, and by the end of sophomore year, he'd asked me to preach my first sermon, and I was just kind of like, nah, but I couldn't say no. He was just one of those personalities, and so I said, yeah, I'll do it, and I got done. I'm sure it was the worst sermon anybody's ever heard. So 2 years later, he comes back to me and says, hey, would you do this again? And I was like, no, I'm going to go be a social studies teacher. I love history and stuff. And there was a gentleman in the foyer who overheard our conversation, and he comes up and he says, you need to preach again, and here's why. Because 2 years ago, when you preached the first time, I put my faith and trust in Jesus Christ. And for me, that sealed the deal. It changed the trajectory of my life, and I said, okay, God, this must be of you and what you really want me to do. And so I did, and never looked back. So
Fantastic. Again, the power of a word.
Yes.
Somebody came to you and said that, and it changed the life. I hear that so much with people, and it's amazing, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So that took you to where? From that point on, when you realized it was God's call, what was your next step?
Yeah, so my youth pastor recommended some colleges, and through a lot of the youth retreats and stuff, there was one particular college that stood out, Baptist Bible College and Seminary. A lot of the speakers were from there, and I just looked at the quality of men and the way they delivered and said, that's the place I need to go. So I didn't know anybody out there. I didn't have any connections with it, but went for a visit, just absolutely fell in love with it, and spent 4 years there. And kind of during those summers, I worked at a Christian camp, and that was another confirmation of that calling of God in my life, that, here I am working with kids, pastoring them, if you will, for a week, living with them, doing life together, and the opportunity to invest in them and to see the spiritual fruit, that was born from that, and not just that confirming it, but again, other people, the director, some of the other people I worked with saying, man, you're great at this. This is what you ought to do. You need to follow God's will in your life. So,
yeah. Again, listening to people being that encouragement moves you right along. Now, where'd you go to Bible college? Seminary, Ed?
Baptist Bible College Seminary, so it's Northeast Pennsylvania. So.
Northeast Pennsylvania. And then the camp, you take your teens there every year, right? Or did you just go there this past year? You did a retreat there with them, did you? The camp there, or was that the college? Yeah,
we went to the college again for Teen Leadership Conference, something they do every summer, and so it's kind of neat. They got to see my old stomping ground and then hear some of the stories and hear some of the professors tell stories about me and some of those things. But
don't listen to everything you hear, right?
Yeah, that's right. Hey, they actually said good stuff. So
they have to. It's a Christian camp.
That's right.
So
yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
No, hey, that's fantastic to get to take your teens back there where you cut your teeth and got your foundation for ministry. That had to be really good. And you never know what that can stir up in them, right?
Right. And that's been our best trip really so far since I've even been here. Just the fruit that was born from people and their desire to serve and get involved, and how do I take this back? It's been awesome. I think it accomplished more than what we anticipated it.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. And tell us about your personal life. I mean, not every detail, obviously. What do you like? We know you like Taco Bell and Mountain Dew.
That's right, yeah.
But, your family, your wife and your kids?
Yeah, yep. So I've been married for 12 years this October.
Hey, I'm married in October. October's a good month to get married, isn't it?
October 13th, yep. So
we're the 18th, 5 days away. That's
yep,
cool.
Yep. It was her dad's birthday, and so kind of special significance there for him too. But
that's good.
So we have 3 kids. So the oldest 2 are girls. So Trinity is 9, Kaylin is 7, and Bryce is 5. So they all have birthdays coming up here in the next few months. So we do that. So a lot of my free time, if you will, is spent at home and just enjoying life and watching my kids grow up too fast, as everybody else says.
Yeah. Yeah.
So enjoy doing that. I enjoy playing basketball, so I have the opportunity to coach at Heritage last year for the first year and continue doing that this year with the varsity team. And so just, really excited about that. And hiking, biking, just being outdoors, enjoying God's creation. That's a lot of who I am and what I like.
What part of rest do you take into account? I mean, when you plan your week out, I know you got living the life of a pastor. Honestly, it's more reaction than it is being proactive, obviously. But when you can plan that kind of thing out, how important is that to you?
Yeah, it's very important. You have to be very intentional and strategic. So I've always gone in and said, hey, Fridays are my day off, and that's a day, I'll protect. And some weeks that works, and other weeks it doesn't. But trying to find those other times. Now that the kids are in school, I can go in earlier so I can be done when they get out of school, and have some of that flexibility to make that a priority, but also to find time for myself. And this is the first year all three of my kids are in school together, and so on the day off I can have some of that quiet time, be a little bit more intentional about that rest, and it's been good so far.
Well, that's good for you and your wife both.
Yes.
I assume, does she work though?
Yeah, she does substitute teaching at the school, so
okay.
Even some of that though, like last week we did lunch on a Wednesday, and just the freedom to be able to get away and do that and spend that time together.
Yeah. And then by the time your kids come back home, you like them again. So it's like, okay, you're allowed to come back in the house. I'm kidding. Because that time does go faster than a snap, for sure.
Yeah.
And there's we're taught grind, be busy, the rest is for sissies and all that. And those are the people that don't last long because they burn out.
Yes.
I find in my old age now, it's like, even if it's a couple of hours to read or to just reflect, or, if I can go for a walk, something.
Yes.
Jesus said, come ye apart and rest a while.
Right.
He even went out and got away because he had to. So if he had to, you come back better.
Right.
You're better for your people.
Yes.
Especially right now. So when you look at what you're transitioning into this year, which has been a great year for you in the church, but you got to planning your time the best you can, and even with that rest in there.
Right.
So which takes us into now, pastors only work one day a week, so what are we talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, when the sermon's over Sunday, that's it,
That's right, yeah.
Nothing else to do. Balancing, especially this year, maybe this is a bad time. Come back in a couple of years on another podcast and you can tell me about it. But what are you learning about balancing family? Because you throw basketball coaching in there, which thank you for doing that. My son is on your team, by the way, so you're a great coach. What are you learning about balancing family time and ministry and sermon prep and all the stuff that Pastor does? You just say, what have you learned about it? You haven't learned anything, or you've learned something, right?
Yeah, it's a constant learning process, right? And some weeks I do really well. Other weeks my wife lets me know I kind of missed the boat. And so always navigating that. And I think the big thing right now is it's always going to look different. There is no set week, particularly in ministry, I don't think in most jobs. And so, again, being intentional with the time that you have. And so my wife and I kind of sit down on Sunday nights and we talk through, okay, here's everything we have going on this week. Where can we find time for us? Where can we find time for the kids, for family time? Just time where I can spend with the kids and she can get a break. And really trying to be intentional about that. My kids are getting old enough now, too, where with the basketball coaching side of things, at least, they can be a little bit more involved in the team, have some roles and responsibility, comes to games, and do some of those things. But
so what is your, I'm going to ask you a real deep question, because I tend to just try to joke around sometimes too much maybe, but what your philosophy on the church? Back in the day, whenever that was, the church sat in the middle of town and it dictated the schedule of people, right?
Right.
You and I are in the quote unquote the business of people, and so now we have way more things that pull on people's time. Church is not the center of their life, even the most devoted Christians, because of the same things that you and I have that pull on us, right?
Yeah.
What's your philosophy on that, on keeping church, actually being in church together, central? How do you go about that as a church, or even from your perspective as a pastor, to keep that at the forefront without making it look like you're beating people over the head?
Right.
And I'm taking notes, by the way. So.
For me, a big part of church life is all about community. And community, we've talked about the power of a word and stuff. That's really what helped me grow in my faith. Even though I grew up in a Christian home and, the pastor beating me, do your devotions, it was those like-minded people around me who said, all right, here's what it looks like to follow Christ, and we're going to walk alongside you, and we're going to help you do that. That really made me the man I am today, and it brought me to this place. And so trying to help people understand the power of community. Okay, so maybe it's not possible to be in church every week, but how do you intentionally form that community so that you can grow in Christ together? And I do believe that as we grow in Christ together, the church becomes more important, not because of the structures or programs, but because of the people there and the investment that is being made in our life, but also the investment we're making into other people. And so that's something we were even talking about at a board meeting last night. How do we continually foster that sense of community, especially in an online presence now where you can listen to a podcast like this and you can get your spiritual food, but I think you miss a very vital component of the church, and that's community. And so getting people to see that and to see the difference between, I have community with these, other parents who are involved in these sporting events, or this other group of people who's in this hunting club or whatever, but the church is united around the mission of, making disciples and becoming better followers of Jesus Christ. And so that's what our community needs to be centered on. And we have to find some time to meet together. It's what writer Hebrews said, right?
I mean, it's pretty plain, isn't it?
Yeah. Don't neglect that. So, yeah.
And that, I love how that's worded, because don't neglect it. And it even means back then, it's very easy to fall out of favor with that. And even look at them. I mean, the synagogue, the temple was right there in the middle of where they were as well.
Right.
But even back then, it was probably easy to not go for whatever reason.
Right. And they had a lot more to lose in those days, right? They could lose their life. We maybe lose, a few friends, or, a little bit of our reputation or something. But we got a lot less at stake for showing up at church than they did.
And to some degree, that's probably part of the problem. I'm not saying we should threaten people's lives for missing church, obviously, but because it looks like an option.
Yes.
And nothing happens to me if I miss right off the bat.
Right.
You've heard the story of the pastor that went to see a guy, and he's sitting in front of his fireplace with the coals on the fire, and he says he missed him in church, and he goes, well, I don't understand what happens to me by missing. So he just took a coal off the fire and set it away from the flame, and it went out and got cold. He said, I'll see you Sunday, without even saying a word. Yeah. It's a gradual thing, right?
Right, exactly. And that's, I think, one of the things I've been able to see as I've been a youth pastor now transitioning to senior pastor is, I see some of these kids who weren't always there all the time and stuff like that. And now, parents are coming back, and why won't my kids, as they get older, be involved in church and take their faith seriously? And I think it does tie into that idea of community, that they needed that group of people around them to invest in them. And so that's a challenge for us as a church, to go meet those people where they're at, but it's also a challenge for them as well to, make it a priority again, because there is more at stake than just a couple hours here on Sunday. So,
talk to me a little bit about, because I deal with this myself and every pastor I talk to, the burden. People don't probably, and I don't want to throw everybody in a bucket, but by and large, the people that really understand a pastor's heart when they're in it for the right reasons, and I know you are. I appreciate your life and your testimony, your spirit, and the care you take from coaching ball to you. That's a ministry, because you're investing in those young men, and you care about the godly men they become more than wins and losses. You take that to the 100,000,000th degree when it comes to pastoring the church. How could you get somebody to understand it's not one day a week? It's never really none on my mind, the burden of the church.
Right.
What that means to you.
Yeah, I mean, we read about that in 2 Corinthians, right, where Paul talks about, on top of that, and he lists this long line of persecutions, right? And then he says, on top of that, I have the burden for all the churches. And when we read that, we don't tend to compare what he's talking about before with that, and yet there is a very heavy weight. And I didn't even understand that until this transition process, where as an assistant pastor, you have some grasp of, I'm a pastor and I've got some responsibilities, and it's important that I live my life this way and stuff. But when you become the lead pastor and solely responsible in some ways for the health of the church, that burden just, it magnifies. I guess I can't describe that totally, how that perspective changes. And even every time I'm in the pulpit, just every word, how important a word is, and how important is this conversation. Just that constant weight. If I say no to this, what's everything that's going to impact?
Right.
Not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, for everybody else, and things that I didn't have to consider before I think about. And then you magnify that by, it's not just a 9-to-5 job, but now people can call at any time. They can send those emails, they can post those criticisms on social media, and it's everything is always there. And my mind is always thinking, man, what do these people need? And that's part of going back to that wrestling. That's why it's so important where pastors get rest, because Jesus intends the Christian life to be a time of rest as well. Come unto me, all you are weary and heavy laden, I will give you rest.
Yes,
and
sir.
I think that applies to pastors too.
I hope so. I really do, don't you?
Yes.
when you don't get enough rest, you're critical, you're bitter, you negative, even if it's a half hour,
Right.
And I don't like myself on that half hour,
Yes.
or I can always tell when it's time when you look out, and if part of that burden is wanting people to be in worship, and when you look out and it's the third, fourth week in a row they're not there, you worry about them, you miss them, what's going on in their lives, you don't take it personal, but you worry because, again, think about the great relationships in your life. It's because you have communication with those people and you're with them, and you just worry about seeing that stray away because, like it or not, there's very few things you can correlate as a pastor to see their heart, and that burden never goes away, does it?
Right. Yeah, you're always thinking about it, and one of my weaknesses is I always overthink things, and so you miss 4 weeks in a row. My mind is churning with every possibility. Did I say something? Did I not do something I should have done? And and that's something I'm learning to work on and trust God a little bit more in some of those results. But at the same time, those things are always on your mind, and it's not because you want to be overcritical of yourself. It's because you genuinely care about other people and their spiritual growth.
Probably the other side of this. Now, you were in a hyper competitive, I don't want to call it industry, but let's just use that word, in youth ministry because, hey, we're going to Pastor Andy's youth group. I don't care where you go on Sunday morning because he's got a great program. He's a great guy. He's got a lot of energy to do a lot of stuff. So that's always good. We got it, but that's a quick flame because kids are only teens for so long, and then they move on, right?
Right.
Take it to another level now when you look at being the pastor and the hyper competitive stuff that's out there. Has any of that stuff kind of come along and bit you or scratched up on you in these last 10 months here, 9 months, or no?
A little bit, but that's where it's so important to build relationships with other pastors and get to know them. I mean, the majority of the time, we're not in competition. No. We're working for the same goal that they're working for. And so, again, let's focus on some of the things that we can agree on, particularly the gospel, and let's make that our main focus. And, particularly the joke's always been, between us and First Baptist, just a revolving door. We've got an underground tunnel, between the churches because every 3 to 5 years we just swap about 50, 60 people. And it's just
a post-it note on them and say, here we go. Well,
just the way it goes. But in all seriousness, again, we're working, for the same goal, for the same mission. And we can't let that competitive spirit distract us because that's what Satan wants. He wants to divide because a house divided can't stand. And
that's right.
And we're together.
Every time when we do stuff like this, when we meet with Kama, when we have the call to all like we did here in Cadillac this summer, it just makes Satan pull his hair out if he has any hair, running mad, going, they're doing it again. They're bonding together. I just want Cadillac to be a community where the gospel's preached in every church and people have the opportunity to go worship him and serve him, right?
Absolutely.
I don't care where they go. If they want to come here, they're more than welcome. I know they're going to get the gospel there at Temple Hill, wherever. And this is one of the greatest things we can do to combat that stupid competitive spirit that should not exist.
Right.
Other people might create it, but I refuse to let that become part of my life. And every time I get to be with you, we have a great time. That's part of building that up.
Right. Exactly. And that was something I learned even when I was interning. I watched a group of youth pastors get together and they talked, and they weren't as close as we are in this town, so they didn't have a lot of the swapping, but understanding in that community and that network, that's important. And now that I'm here in Cadillac and with all these other churches, went out and found that community, and there's a group of 6 of us who meet together, and it's just kind of funny because, we're swapping people left and right, and, we're caring about them. Hey, how's this person doing?
Yeah.
Let me offer you this bit of advice or some of this, and working with them, and just being able to share those things is hugely encouraging, and to know that, hey, they're going to another great church where they can grow in their relationship with Christ. And that's what it's all about. I understand, particularly from a parent's perspective, you want to do what's best for your kids. And if there are options, if there's something that might work better and still teaches the same thing, just a different voice, I don't have a problem with that.
Right. Heaven's a big place. Ever how you want to get there. And I think just what you said is a great thought for the people in the church. When they do that, they may think, well, if I leave there, the pastor could care less. I'm gone, so they don't care. If they could find out you're asking about them and praying for them still, well, that changes the perspective even from the pew.
Yes, absolutely.
Because that never goes away.
Right.
It never does.
Yeah.
It's still the greatest calling in the world, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
Could you see yourself you might love history and being a social studies teacher. Could you see yourself going back to that now, though?
Not at all. So I actually had the opportunity at my last church I was at to sub in the public school, just kind of way to supplement income and stuff. And it was just, I'm glad I didn't choose this, because I'm making a difference in kids' lives, but that's here and now. But what I'm doing right now is for all of eternity. And, I think, and I talked about this a couple weeks ago in my sermon, I think in heaven, there's going to be a long line of people who I had no idea that I influenced. And they're going to come up and they're going to say, do you remember that time? And I'm going to say no, but I'm glad God used it in your life. And it's to me, it's worth it all.
Oh man, so, that's great.
Yeah.
Just like the gentleman that said that, you need to preach again, because 2 years ago I got right with Jesus.
That's right.
We don't know what we're really having an impact of.
Yeah.
What's the funniest thing? The biggest knee slapping thing that's happened to you in ministry that you can say on here anyway. Some stuff, may not be. You may not want to relive again, right? But can you think of anything that's just really stood out there, just made you laugh and think only in ministry could this happen?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of one that I can share. That's the problem.
Well, that many years in youth ministry, and
that's right, yeah.
Toilets overflowing or, whatever, socks hanging from a bunk in a camp or something,
Yeah, just all the things that happen. I remember at seminary, the professor saying, they're sharing their horror stories, right? And you're like, that'll never happen, like you just had a weird church or something. And us young guys, we knew better, right? And then getting out into ministry and just seeing the stuff, and a lot of it I laugh at now, just some of the silly stuff and the petty stuff that goes on. It wasn't this church, so I can share this, but
okay, good.
They were doing a building remodel, and this person wanted this set of cabinets in the kitchen, and these other people wanted this one. And this was a big fight. It was going to split the church. And so the one night, the guy goes out and he buys the cabinets he wants. He installs them, everything overnight. People come in Sunday morning and see him, and it was just the reaction. Like,
I'll do this, and this is the way it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
I even had another instance, it's not funny. I don't worry about my appearance that much. I don't have much to work with anyway. So there's this lady who came up to me and said, "You know what? You really need some new clothes." And she gave me $100. Said, "Go buy yourself some clothes."
No way! Are you kidding?
And so just humorous, and I did. I used the money for that. Just honesty's sake here.
I would have gone out to eat. I would have said, "Yeah, I'll get some new clothes right after I go to McDonald's."
That's true. Minutes. I think after we bought the shirts, my wife and I did go out to eat. But
see, thank you very much. Yeah,
but
so oh, that's good.
Just things like that, and probably a lot of the other experiences I can't share with youth ministry. But
well, God knows, and that's why you're still the guy that you are. Everything shapes us into who we are, even the funny things,
Right.
And I think what keeps us alive and still productive is to being able to laugh.
Yes, absolutely.
Just laugh at it, and something happened not long ago, and I just laughed and said, Satan's getting desperate now. If he's going to resort to that, then it's not going to work. So greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. That's my favorite verse. Yep. And I think you have to hang your hat on that, in ministry for sure.
All the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So to wrap this up, a lot of people, and this always brings my mind back to this last week. Pastor in California took his life. I don't know if you saw that or not. And I think about the people that are wallowed in depression in ministry and dealing with stuff. Hey, you and I both, and we share and we pray together. Satan can throw a lot of stuff at us that we don't see coming.
Right. And
you can question God and tell God the list. I'm doing all this here. I don't understand why this is going on. But sometimes some people they buckle under that pressure, and God help them and their families. Yeah. What do you tell somebody if they were sitting here today telling you, Andy, this is not fair. I don't understand what's going on. I'm about ready to quit, even though I feel like God's called me to do. What do you tell the discouraged person in ministry today? How would you encourage them?
Yeah, a lot of times when people come to me with that, I go back to Elijah. He comes off that big mountaintop experience, right?
Yeah.
And he runs and says, "God, I'm done. Just kill me. This is horrible. I'm the only one left." And God basically says, in a nice way, "Be quiet, Elijah. Like, I've still got a plan for your life." And just that constant reminder that I can't see the big picture. I don't always know what's going on, but God's not done with me yet. That God has a plan that's bigger than me anyway. If he wants to say, "Hey, like Jeremiah, you're never going to have a convert. Your ministry is going to be seemingly unsuccessful in the eyes of the world," so be it. That's up to him to decide. But our focus is always on being faithful. And so continue to be faithful. I know it's hard, but again, we have a great high priest who understands, who's there with us, and so we got nothing to fear. So let's just keep serving him and trusting him with the results. And that's something that's taken me a long time to learn, and there are times that I forget that too. I tend to take things pretty personally. But learning, this is never about me. It's always about him and what he wants to accomplish. And in that too, I always tell him, like Elijah, who'd God send him? He said, Elisha, I got somebody to come alongside you and help encourage you. For those times you get down and mopey, and somebody's going to tell you truth, right? And hopefully in a loving way. And I think Elisha did that. But, telling those people, you need to find those people in your life, because it's easy to find a discouraging voice out there. You don't have to look very far.
Oh, man.
Right? But to find those people who can be your encouragement, and you can just be real with and say, hey, I'm struggling today. Can you just be here for me? I mean, that's huge. So
if you live long enough, you'll be both people.
Yes.
You'll be the one that's dealing with it, and you can be the encourager. And when you've been both, you really know how to be that encourager, for sure, when you get there, because it does happen. Those are good words to live by, and good words to pull you up out of the pit. We all fall in it sometimes, for sure.
Exactly.
Pastor Andy Brubaker, Temple Hill Baptist Church, Division Street in the metropolis of Cadillac, Michigan. Give us your church times and ministry times and what goes on during a typical week starting on the weekends at Temple Hill, so people watching looking for a good church can come visit.
Right. Yeah, so Sunday mornings at 9:30 we do our celebration service. Then we have a time after that, which we call Sunday Connect. Starts about 10:45, and that's just a time to do a lot of what we just talked about, encourage one another, connect, build that community. We also, provide coffee and food to help, spark that, whatever works.
You got to bake the hook, man.
That's right.
That's it.
Doing that, and then afterwards, sometimes we have just a small D group. We call it a discipleship group that meets in the sanctuary. Other times we'll do an all-church study. We're getting ready to do one on spiritual gifts. So that runs from 11:15 to 12 o'clock, and we run that. Try and theme it all the way from the kids through the adults, so they can all work through the same thing and talk about those conversations. Wednesday nights, we usually have Awana, which is our kids program, age 3. You have to be potty trained through 5th grade, and then we have youth group for junior high and senior high on those same nights as well. A lot of other ministries that are thrown in there, ladies, men's Bible studies, things like that, but those are kind of the big ones that we encourage people. Hey, if you're checking us out, you're interested, those are the good times to come. So
fantastic. Your Awana group, I know for sure, is a great ministry to the community. I know a lot of kids that come to that, and the youth group has been very, very a cornerstone in the community for sure, helping a lot of kids out. So great church, preaches the truth. Great loving pastor. He's a U of M fan, so there's still some parts of his heart God hasn't got to yet, but he's getting there, right?
Yes.
But no, I appreciate it. Thank you, Temple Hill. You did it right. You to replace a man who'd been there for so many years as Pastor Jack, to be able to come in and put a great young man on fire for the Lord, has a great testimony and great passion for people. That's exactly what you need to do. So I applaud you for that, even though my opinion gets you maybe a thimble full of water somewhere, but that's still all right. But just thank you for being who you are, and thank you for being my friend. And it's always good to just be around you, so thank you. Thanks for being on here today, too. I appreciate it very much.
Yep.
I feel like I just bought a car.
Yeah, no doubt.
Sitting there across the table. The payment book is coming in the mail here in a minute, but
perfect.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. No, my pleasure. So.